The amber light hits my wine glass, the liquid trembling. They think I'm just their personal bank, ready to fund their next vacation. They don't know about the files I've gathered or the unblockable move I've planned. They're waiting for a check. I'm waiting to detonate their world with a single sentence. Tonight, their contempt ends. My name is Leah Ward, and tonight, I am a trap waiting to be sprung. The restaurant is the kind of place Chicago reserves for its quiet predators. River North, dark wood, leather banquettes, and ceilings so high they seem to absorb sound, leaving only the muffled percussion of heavy silver on bone china. The tablecloths are thick, white, and unforgiving, glowing under spotlights that are aimed with surgical precision. Our waiter moves with the tense, silent grace of a man who knows not to interrupt a feeding. He's been hovering just outside our circle of light, holding his breath, waiting for a signal. I am 29 years old. I work at Halcyon Bridge Analytics, a place where my entire job is to look at a complex system, find the single point of failure, and calculate the cost of its collapse. For the last 5 years, I have failed to apply that skill to my own life. Across from me, my father, Graham Whitaker, gestures with a hand that still wears a signet ring. At 61, he is a portrait of faded grandeur, a man living on the fumes of charm he possessed 30 years ago. The suit is expensive, but the cuffs are just beginning to fray. He thinks no one notices. He's wrong. Beside him sits his mother, Vivian, 57 and preserved in the cold, clear amber of her own expectations. Her blonde hair is an architectural marvel. Her pearls are real, and her smile is a thin, polished weapon. She is watching me, not as a mother watches a daughter, but as a bank auditor watches a spreadsheet, searching for the decimal point that is out of place. His sister, Brielle, is the reason for this charade. At 24, she is vibrating with a brittle, high-pitched energy. Her hand, the left one, of course, is permanently displayed on the tablecloth, a diamond the size of a knucklebone catching the light and flashing it into my eyes. She is engaged to Colton Fairchild, a name that is spoken in hushed tones in this city, a name that represents the right kind of money. Brielle, my parents believe, has finally secured their future. And then there is Evan, my brother, 33, an art teacher at a public high school. He is the family's designated neutral territory, the one who survives by making himself small. He is currently engaged in a deep, fascinating study of his water glass, tracing the condensation with his fingernail, having already said his piece for the evening, which amounted to, "Congratulations, Brielle, the restaurant is nice." This dinner, according to the embossed invitations sent to my condo, is a celebration of engagement. This is a lie. This is a business meeting. I am here because the down payment for a villa in Tuscany is due, and the Fairchilds, despite their legacy, are notoriously slow to open their checkbook for their son's fiancé's family. "The market must be keeping you busy." "Leah," Graham says. He swirls his Cabernet, a deep, blood-red color. "This is the code. It's not small talk. It's not paternal interest in my career at Halcyon. He has no idea what I do, other than that it produces a predictable, 6-figure salary. The market, in my father's language, is the coded inquiry into my bank account. It is the polite, civilized way of asking, 'When are you transferring the money?' It's volatile," I reply, keeping my voice even. I pick up my own knife, feeling the satisfying ergonomic weight of it in my hand. Risk modeling is high demand right now. Vivian's eyes narrow. Just a fraction. My answer was not a yes. It was not the enthusiastic, compliant signal she was expecting. "That's nice, dear," she says, the words clipped. "We're so glad one of you has a practical head on your shoulders. Brielle is all romance." Brielle preens. "Oh, Mother, stop. It's just, Colton and I found the most perfect venue. It's where that movie star got married, the one with the olive grove. But the planners there are absolute tyrants. They need the deposit to hold our date in May." Here it comes. The overture is complete. The stage is set. It's almost laughably small. The deposit. Graham says, leaning back as if the matter is already settled. He's adopting his man of the world posture, the one he uses when he's about to spend my money. Just a formality to secure the date. They need $15,000 by Friday. He doesn't look at me. He says it to the table, to the air. But the entire gravitational pull of the family shifts. 4 pairs of eyes. Graham's expectant. Vivian's assessing. Brielle's demanding. Evan's pained and avoidant. All fix on me. I am the practical head. I am the risk analyst. I am the family's human ATM. For a decade, this has been my role. It was a part I was cast in, a script I was handed, and for a decade, I played it. I paid for the emergency mortgage payments. I covered the credit card debts from vacations I wasn't invited on. I funded the fantasy of the Whitaker family's continued relevance. But 3 months ago, I started seeing a therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a spine of steel. She gave my situation a name. It wasn't helping. It wasn't family duty. It was financial abuse. And she asked me one question that shattered the entire illusion. Leah, what is your emergency fund? I had nothing. My entire salary was routed, diverted, and siphoned into the black hole of my family's entitlement. A person who analyzes risk for a living was one car accident, one medical emergency, one layoff away from total ruin. So I made a new plan. I opened new accounts. I started diverting my own money. I built a wall. And tonight, they have just run face first into it. I take a slow sip of my wine. The Cabernet is dry, acidic. I let the silence stretch, forcing them to sit in the discomfort of their own demand. The waiter, sensing the drop in pressure, starts to approach, then wisely retreats. No, I say. It's a quiet word. It is not angry. It is not emotional. It is a simple, 2-letter statement of fact. Graham, who had been lifting his glass for a premature toast, freezes, his mouth quirks. I'm sorry? I said no, I repeat, setting my knife down, placing it perfectly parallel to the plate. I won't be paying the $15,000. Brielle's face crumples. It's a performative, theatrical distress. Leah, what are you talking about? It's my wedding. It's just to hold the date. I understand, I say, turning to her. But I can't contribute. I'm building my emergency fund right now, and all my discretionary income is allocated. Vivian's face goes perfectly, terrifyingly blank. The polished mask is gone, revealing the cold, hard machinery beneath. An emergency fund? What emergency? The unspoken words hang in the air. The only emergency you are allowed to have is ours. My own, I say. Graham lets out a short, sharp laugh. It's a terrible sound, full of genuine, mocking disbelief. He puts his glass down with a thud that makes the silverware jump. He leans forward, the charming facade evaporating, leaving only the bitter, resentful man who has been coasting on his daughter's paycheck. He looks at me, his eyes cold. He sneers. An emergency fund? And how does it feel? He says, his voice dripping with contempt. Being useless? The air in the restaurant cracks, the background noise of other diners, the clinking of glasses, the distant sizzle from the kitchen. It all vanishes. There is only the white tablecloth, the shocked, pale faces of my family, and the sudden, terrible silence. Evan actually flinches, looking up from his plate for the first time, his eyes wide with a familiar, sick dread. They think this is a negotiation. They think this is a tantrum, a moment of weakness they can bully or guilt me out of. They still think I am their ATM. They have just discovered it is out of order. I feel nothing, not anger, not fear, not sadness. For the first time, I feel only the clean, cold certainty of a calculation that has finally been solved. The machine has been running for years, and the mechanism has finally clicked into place. Very slowly, I lift my hand, I pick up my wine glass, the one with the trembling, amber liquid. I look my father in the eye, and I set the glass down on the white tablecloth. The sound of the heavy crystal base meeting the solid wood beneath the linen is not loud, but in the vacuum of that silence, it sounds like a gunshot. The spring inside me, wound so tight for a decade that its coils had fused, finally snaps, useless. The word hangs in the air, thick and oily, poisoning the expensive atmosphere of the steakhouse. Graham's face is smug. He believes he has just delivered a killing blow, a verbal checkmate. He thinks he has reminded me of my place. My place? I've known it since I was 10 years old. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because my mother, Vivian, always reviewed the household accounts on Tuesdays. I had come home from school with a math award, a cheap paper certificate with a gold foil sticker. Evan, my brother, had just tracked mud onto her clean kitchen floor, and Brielle was crying because she wasn't allowed to wear lipstick to a friend's party. Vivian didn't even look at my certificate. She was staring at a calculator, her lips a thin, white line. "Evan," she'd said, her voice sharp as glass, "you will always be the creative one. You'll make messes, and you'll be charming, but you will never be practical." Evan, relieved, just nodded and ran off. "Brielle, darling," she'd cooed, turning to my sister. "You are the beautiful one. Your job is to be lovely and to marry well. That is your contribution." Brielle's tears stopped instantly. Then she looked at me. My math award was still in my hand. "And you, Leah," she said, tapping the calculator. "You are the smart one. You are the practical one. You will be our security. You are the family's retirement fund." She didn't say it as a burden. She said it as a compliment, an honor. I was 10 years old, and I had just been given my permanent, non-negotiable corporate charter. Evan got freedom. Brielle got beauty. I got the bill. And I spent the next 19 years paying it. At the dinner table, their faces are a study in expectation. Graham is waiting for me to crumble, for the apology, for the shame-faced agreement to transfer the $15,000. Vivian is already calculating the interest on my defiance. Brielle just looks annoyed, as if I am a waiter who has brought her the wrong order. My programming runs deep. The first true test came when I was 24. I had just landed the job at Halcyon Bridge. My first real salary. The first time in my life I had breathing room. I was living in a tiny studio apartment in Lincoln Park, and I had just finished mapping out a plan to pay off my student loans in 3 years. The call came at 2 a.m. It was Vivian, and she was using the voice, the one that was breathy, shattered, and just on the edge of hysteria. "Leah, darling, I didn't want to call you. I know you're busy." "Mom, what's wrong? It's 2 a.m. It's the house. Leah, your father. He made a bad investment. We're behind. They're talking about foreclosure." A perfectly timed sob, sharp and painful. "I can't lose this house. Your father. It would kill him. I just can't bear it." The house, the big, sprawling Tudor in Kenilworth that I had grown up in, the one that represented everything they were and everything I was supposed to pay for. "How much?" I'd asked, my stomach already cold. She told me it was a staggering amount, but then came the hook. "It's just temporary. Leah, just until your father gets this new deal off the ground, just to get us through the next few months, we'll pay you back. I swear we will." So I did it. I drained my savings. I diverted my loan payments. I took over the mortgage. I was 24 years old, and I had just become the primary breadwinner for 2 healthy, capable adults. That was 5 years ago. The temporary arrangement became permanent. The few months became my entire adult life. The mortgage was just the beginning. The cycle of emergencies became a predictable monthly event. It was a constant, low-grade hum of financial hemorrhage. "Leah, the property taxes are due, and we're just a little short. Leah, the club membership is up for renewal, and you know it's where your father makes all his contacts. It's an investment, really. Leah, Brielle needs a new wardrobe for the season. She has to look the part. Colton's family expects it." It was the gaslighting that perfected the machine. When I would finally, weekly, protest, Graham would deploy his signature logic. Leah, we are a family. We invest in our image. Your success reflects on us, and our image reflects on you. It's synergy. It was corporate nonsense applied to a shakedown. Vivian's method was more visceral. The moment I asked, "Why again?" or "What happened to the money from last time?" her hand would flutter to her chest. Her voice would get faint. "Oh, Leah, please don't upset me. My heart. The doctor said I must avoid stress. You're so practical. You don't understand the pressure we're under. You're trying to make me sick." The tools were simple but effective. First, the illusion of past favors. We raised you, we fed you, we gave you every opportunity. The fact that I had paid for my entire education at Northwestern with a combination of scholarships and crippling loans was never mentioned. Second, shame. Are you really going to let your family lose face over a few dollars? What will the Fairchilds think? And third, the ultimate weapon, fear. If you don't do this, you will be the one who breaks this family. It will be your fault. I was programmed to pay. I was an ATM, and my PIN code was guilt. Then, 3 months ago, the ATM malfunctioned. A project at Halcyon had gone spectacularly wrong. A model I had built had failed, and the fallout was intense. I was working 90-hour weeks. My hair was falling out, and I was having panic attacks in the stairwell. My boss, a decent man, had mandated a leave of absence and a referral to a therapist. I sat in Dr. Lila Mason's quiet, sunlit office, describing my stress. I talked about the pressure, the demands, the emergencies. I was just tired. "Doctor," Mason listened patiently. She took no notes. When I finished, she leaned forward and said 4 words that changed my life. "Leah, that's not stress. That is financial abuse." It was like a key turning in a lock I never knew existed. Abuse, not duty, not help, not family. Abuse, a clinical, precise, and accurate term for the theft of my life, one emergency at a time. I walked out of her office that day a different person. The fog of obligation, the thick, cloying smoke of guilt that had choked me for a decade. It all evaporated. The frame didn't just crack, it shattered. I was no longer a victim, I was a strategist. I went home and, for the first time, I applied the skills from my job to my family. I created a new, encrypted email account. I began the audit. Every Venmo request, screenshotted and saved to a PDF. Every desperate text message, exported and dated. Every email from Graham about a can't-miss opportunity, forwarded and filed. I pulled 5 years of my bank statements. I highlighted every transfer to Whitaker, Graham, Vivian, or Brielle's bridal fund. The numbers were horrifying. The act of compiling them was liberating. It was no longer a vague feeling of being drained. It was a data set. It was evidence. I set my boundaries. The next time Vivian called about a critical landscaping bill, I said no. I listened to her cry, then feign a heart palpitation, and I said no again. I hung up the phone, shaking, but I hadn't paid. I made a vow to myself, a cold, quiet promise in the dark of my condo. I would no longer pay to alleviate my guilt. I would no longer fund their fantasy. I would build my wall, my emergency fund, and I would wait. I knew they wouldn't just accept it. Their supply line had been cut, and they would escalate. They would get desperate. They would force a confrontation. And when they did, when they finally pushed me past the point of return, I would not just defend. I would pull the plug on the entire charade. This dinner, this ridiculous, expensive, celebratory sham, is that confrontation? It's the test. My father's sneering question echoes in the silence. How does it feel being useless? He has no idea. He thinks he's shaming me. He thinks he's pushing the guilt button. He doesn't realize he just armed the device. I look at him, at the man who called me his retirement fund. I look at my mother, the woman who weaponized her health to steal my salary. I look at my sister, who is glaring at me as if I've just ruined her wedding by existing. Useless. No, I think not useless. For the first time in my life, I am finally, truly, useful to myself. And I am about to be their single, catastrophic point of failure. My father's insult settles over the table, a stain on the pristine white linen. Useless. They are all watching me, a pack waiting to see if the wounded one will submit. Graham is still leaning forward, his face flushed with the triumph of his own cruelty. Vivian's lips are curved in a faint, satisfied smile. This is the part where I'm supposed to cry, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, and to promise to transfer the $15,000. I do not cry. I do not apologize. Instead, I reach into my purse. The simple minimalist act of placing my iPhone on the table next to my plate is, in itself, a violation. In my family, phones at the table are considered common. I see Vivian's eyes narrow. Leah, what are you doing? Put that away. I ignore her. I tap the screen, and the bright, white light of the display illuminates my face. My fingers are steady. I am a risk analyst, and this is just a procedure. I tap my banking app. My balance is healthy. For the first time in my life, I navigate to the transfers and payments section, then to scheduled payments. There it is, the monthly albatross. Whitaker Home Mortgage, scheduled for next week, $3,800. My thumb hovers over the cancel payment button. I can feel Graham's impatience radiating across the table. Leah, I am speaking to you. Put the phone down. We are discussing your sister's wedding. I am handling my emergency, I say quietly. I press the button. A confirmation screen appears. Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment? I press yes. A small green check mark appears. Payment canceled. One chain, broken. Next, I tap the search bar in my contacts. Graham Whitaker. I pull up his contact details. Scroll to the bottom. Block this caller. I tap it. Then I open my Venmo app. Graham Whitaker. Tap. Block. I go back to my banking app, to the Zelle settings. Graham Whitaker. Block. What is the meaning of this? Vivian's voice is no longer smooth. It has a sharp, metallic edge. I do not look at her. I am working. Search. Vivian Whitaker. Block this caller. Open Venmo. Vivian Whitaker. Block. Open Zelle. Vivian Whitaker. Block. Brielle, finally sensing that the script has been shredded, lets out a wail. Leah, what are you doing? Are you listening? We need the deposit. No, you do, I say, my eyes still on the screen. I close the apps. I lock my phone and place its screen down on the table. Then, I make eye contact with the waiter, the one who has been skillfully avoiding our toxic little island. He sees my signal and is at my side in an instant, a flicker of relief in his eyes that the stalemate is finally over. Sir, I say, my voice clear and calm. I slide my black American Express card from my purse. I will be paying for my meal, 1 New York strip, medium rare, and 2 glasses of the Cabernet. That is all. I hand him the card. He takes it, his professionalism a shield. I look back at my family, at the 3 stunned faces staring at me as if I have just sprouted a second head. Evan, as always, is staring at his hands. As for the rest, I say, gesturing to their half-eaten fillets, the lobster tails, the multiple bottles of wine. You're on your own. That is the detonation. You, ungrateful, brat. Graham's voice is a low roar that finally makes the other diners turn and look. He rips his heavy linen napkin from his lap and throws it onto the table. It lands with a soft, expensive thud, a pathetic white flag of his rage. After everything we have given you, everything. I stand up. My chair makes a quiet, scraping sound on the polished wood floor. Ungrateful? I repeat the word. It sounds alien. Let's run the numbers, shall we? I am a risk analyst. After all, let's analyze this investment you've made in me. I look at Graham. I paid for my entire education at Northwestern. I took out the loans. I worked 3 jobs. I graduated with honors and $160,000 in debt, which I have been paying off myself. I turned to Vivian, whose face has gone a pale, papery white. I have paid the mortgage on your house in Kenilworth, a house I have not lived in for almost a decade. For the last 5 years. That is 60 straight months of payments. That is the $3,800 payment I just canceled. That totals $228,000. I look at Brielle, whose manufactured tears are now real, her mascara beginning to run. I have paid for your car insurance, your spring wardrobe, your essential trips to Miami, and, yes, I even paid for the caterer for this very engagement party. I have paid for everything, for all of you, for so long, that you've forgotten it's my money at all. You've come to see it as your allowance. I pick up my purse. I look back at my father. His face is a mask of purple, apoplectic rage. You asked me how it feels to be useless, Dad. My voice is cold. All the warmth, all the fear, all the desperate need for their approval has been burned out of me. I've decided you're right. A useless ATM isn't a good investment. It should just stop working. Consider this my official notice. I'm shutting down. I turn. I do not run. I walk. The silence that follows me is absolute. It is a physical thing, a vacuum that sucks all the air and noise from the room. I can feel every eye in the restaurant on my back. I walk past the bar, through the heavy oak doors, and out into the night. The door clicks shut behind me, sealing them in their warm, bright, expensive tomb. The Chicago wind hits me first. It's November. The air is brutal, coming off the river with a wet, biting cold that steals my breath. It smells like iron and impending snow. I pull my coat tighter, but the cold doesn't bother me. It feels clean. It feels like the first honest lungful of air I've taken in my entire adult life. I am free. The feeling is so sudden, so total, that it makes me dizzy. There is no guilt. There is no regret. There is only a vast, empty, primal sense of release. I have amputated the gangrenous limb. I have survived. I make it halfway down the block, toward the bridge, when my phone, clutched in my hand, begins to vibrate. It doesn't just vibrate once. It begins to buzz with a frantic, desperate energy, lighting up the dark sidewalk. A text from Vivian. Leah, you have given me a palpitation. You know what the doctor said. You are trying to kill me. Come back right now. A text from Graham. You will regret this. You have no idea what you've just done to this family. You are to come back to this table and apologize, or you are no longer our daughter. A text from Brielle. You've ruined my wedding. This is all your fault. Mom is sick. Colton's family will hear about this. You've ruined everything. It keeps going, a stream of pixelated venom, threats, emotional blackmail, guilt, manipulation. It is a digital assault, the death throes of the parasites as they realize the host has finally, truly, cut them off. I stand under a streetlight, watching the screen light up again and again, my face a blank mask in the reflection. Then, a new message slides in, a different name. Evan. The message is short, just 2 lines. Are you okay? A second later, I'm here. It's the only one that isn't a demand. It's the only one that asks a question. It is the single, unexpected variable in my calculation. I stare at his name, at the simple, human words, a tiny crack in the ice. I take a deep, shaky breath, the cold air stinging my lungs. I slide the phone into my coat pocket, silencing the buzzing, ignoring the plea, the threats, and the one lone signal of support. This is not the time to differentiate. This is the time for a clean severance. I keep walking. I do not look back. The air in Derek Shaw's office felt sterile, scrubbed clean of emotion. It smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner and dark roast coffee. Derek himself looked like he was carved from statistical data. Sharp suit, sharper gaze, a watch that probably cost more than my first car. He was the best financial forensics specialist in the state, and I was paying him an astronomical hourly rate to prove it. "You're sure?" he asked. His fingers steepled. His voice was a dry baritone. "A full 5-year audit of all your accounts, personal and shared, is extensive. It's invasive. And, Leah, it is very expensive." "I'm sure," I said. My own voice sounded thin. "I have a suspicion that money has been moving in ways I didn't approve." "Suspicion," he repeated. He didn't ask for details. Just swiveled in his high-backed leather chair to the bank of monitors behind him. "All right, let's pull the curtain back. I have the access you granted me this morning. We'll start with the joint household account. Trace all major outflows for the last 60 months. I sat in silence, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. The only sound was the rhythmic, almost silent click-clack of his keyboard. He worked with a speed that was mesmerizing. Windows opened and closed. Numbers populated spreadsheets in waterfalls of black and red. It felt like a medical procedure, an exploratory surgery on the life I thought I had. After maybe 20 minutes, he stopped. He didn't turn around. He just stared at the main screen. "Well," he said, his voice flat, "you had more than a suspicion. You had a bullseye." He swiveled to face me, his expression unreadable. "I've isolated a recurring transfer pattern, small amounts at first, dating back 4 years, then larger, more frequent transfers, all moving from your primary joint account to a series of external accounts." "Whose accounts?" I whispered, though I already knew. "The beneficiary name on all of them is Whitaker Holdings, or variations thereof. G. Whitaker. V. Whitaker, or just Whitaker Projects. Sound familiar?" My stomach hollowed out. My in-laws, Graham's parents." I was afraid of that. He tapped a few more keys, and a final summary box appeared on the monitor he turned toward me. "In the last 5 years, Leah, you have involuntarily invested $336,000 into the Whitaker family." The number hung in the air. $336,000. It wasn't just money, it was my late nights, the bonuses I'd earned, the inheritance from my grandmother, the future I was building. It was all siphoned away, stolen by the people who were supposed to be my family. "But Graham managed the finances," I stammered. "He said he was moving it to high-yield savings. He said—" "He lied," Derek said, not unkindly. "There are no high-yield savings accounts in your name, Leah. There are just these drains, and based on this activity, I'd say it was systematic, deliberate." I couldn't breathe. The room was closing in. $336,000. "We're not done," Derek said, his voice sharpening, pulling me back from the panic. If they're this brazen with direct transfers, I'd bet my license they didn't stop there. This level of deceit is rarely isolated. He turned back to his terminal. "I'm running a full-spectrum credit report, all 3 bureaus, using your social security number. This will show us everything, every inquiry, every line of credit, every loan ever associated with your name." This time, the wait was agonizing. The green loading bar creeping across the screen felt like a fuse burning down. When the report finally populated, Derek let out a low whistle. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." He printed the document, the printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out page after page. He didn't show it to me, not at first. He laid the pages out on his desk, his eyes scanning them like a general reading battlefield reports. "Leah," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "when did you open a platinum card with Capital One?" "I didn't. I only have one card, a Visa." "According to this, you have 3 major credit cards, a Capital One, a Chase Sapphire, and an American Express, all opened within the last 2 years. All. And this is the interesting part. With the paper statements being mailed to an address in Edgewood." "My parents-in-law," I whispered, the blood draining from my face. "That's Graham's parents' house." "They didn't even bother to hide it," Derek muttered, shaking his head. "They assumed you'd never look. And then there's this, a personal loan, taken out 8 months ago." "A loan? For what?" $25,000. From a regional credit union. The stated purpose was home improvement. Did you do any home improvement 8 months ago? No, we were saving for the wedding. Graham said we were tight on money. That's why he... My voice broke. That's why he said we couldn't afford the venue I wanted. Derek's face was grim. He highlighted a number on the last page. The total outstanding balance on these 3 cards and this one loan, all in your name, is $58,000. Every single card is charged up to 99% of its limit. $58,000. On top of the $336,000, the sheer scale of the betrayal was suffocating. It wasn't just theft, it was an infestation. They had burrowed into my life, using my name, my credit, my social security number, that 9-digit string that was supposed to be mine alone, and bled me dry. I looked at Derek, my eyes burning. This isn't just a family dispute anymore, is it? He leaned forward, his professional mask slipping just enough to show a flicker of genuine anger. Leah, what your in-laws and your fiancé have been doing is not taking advantage. It is not mooching. It is a multi-year systematic campaign of identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy. These are felonies. These are crimes. The word hit me like a slap. Crimes. For years, I had bent over backward, trying to earn their approval, trying to be good enough. I'd let them mock me, belittle me, and use me. I'd explained it away as, that's just how they are. I'd let Graham act as the mediator, the one who protected me, all while he was the one holding the door open for them, handing them the knife. A new feeling was dawning, cold and hard and sharp. It was pushing the nausea down, replacing the shaking in my hands with a steady, icy calm. What do we do now? I asked. Derek's expression shifted. He was all business again. Now, we build the case. We transition from financial audit to criminal investigation. He began to move with purpose. He took the thick stack of printed credit reports and the spreadsheets of bank transfers and walked them to a large industrial copier. He made 2 full copies. He brought one set back to his desk, took a heavy time-date stamp, and methodically thumped each page. Clack, clack, clack. The sound was final, like a gavel. He handed me a new, empty manila folder. On the tab, he wrote one word in black marker: evidence. You put everything in there, he instructed. Every email, every text, every piece of paper that feels wrong. From this moment on, you are an archivist. You are documenting a crime. He handed me the stamped copies. This is your set. Mine goes in a fireproof safe. The originals are digital and backed up on 3 separate servers. They can't make this disappear. While I carefully placed the documents into the folder, Derek picked up his desk phone. He put it on speaker. First, he said, we stop the bleeding. He dialed a number. A pleasant, automated voice filled the room. Welcome to Experian. For English, press 1. For the next hour, I sat and listened as Derek Shaw systematically dismantled the life that had been stolen from me. With a clinical, detached voice, he navigated the automated systems of all 3 major credit bureaus: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I am calling on behalf of my client to report identity theft, he said, over and over. We are requesting an immediate fraud alert and a full credit freeze on her file. Yes, I have the police report number here. He'd already filed one online while the report was printing. He was magnificent. He cut through customer service scripts, demanded supervisors, and cited federal statutes until he got what he wanted. By the time he hung up the 3rd call, my name was locked down tighter than Fort Knox. No one could open so much as a library card in my name without my direct, explicit, PIN-verified consent. That's step 1, he said, making a note on a legal pad. They're cut off. As if on cue, my phone, which I'd set to silent on the desk, lit up, a voicemail notification. The caller ID was Vivian, Graham's mother. I stared at it, my stomach churning. Don't delete it, Derek said, noticing my expression. It's just her, yelling. She's been leaving them for days, calling me ungrateful. A bitch. For leaving Graham. For humiliating her son. "Let me hear it," he said. My hand was shaking as I pressed the speakerphone icon. Vivian's voice, shrill and laced with venom, filled the quiet office. "Still hiding. You pathetic little coward. You think you can just walk away? After everything we did for you? After Graham gave you the time of day? You are nothing. Leah, a spoiled, ungrateful child. You will come crawling back, you hear me? You will beg Graham to take you back, and maybe, just maybe, we'll let you apologize to this family properly." The tirade went on for another 30 seconds before she hung up with a final, furious slam. I was mortified, my face burning with shame. Derek, however, was smiling. It was not a nice smile. "Perfect," he said. He had been recording her voicemail with his own phone. He saved the file, emailed it to himself, and then forwarded it to me. Title that, Evidence VM01. In a criminal case, this establishes motive and a pattern of harassment. She just became a witness against herself. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Evan, my brother, a picture message. I opened it. It was a photograph of an invoice, beautifully embossed on thick, cream-colored paper. It was from the Grand Oak Room, the wedding venue I had loved, the one Graham told me we couldn't possibly afford. My blood ran cold. The invoice was for a $20,000 deposit, and it was in my name. Under the picture, Evan's text read, "Found this. It was in a pile of Graham's mail. Did you book this?" "Derek," I said, my voice hoarse. I handed him the phone. He studied the image. "You didn't sign this?" "I've never seen it before in my life. He told me it was too expensive. He said we booked a country club instead." "Look at the signature line," Derek said, zooming in on the photo. It was my name, Leah Kincaid, scrawled in an overly confident, loopy cursive. It was a terrible forgery. It looked nothing like my actual signature. But it did look familiar. I thought back, a memory flashing in my mind. The birthday card Graham had given me last year. The way he wrote his G, looping it under the rest of his name. The sharp, decisive cross on his H. I looked back at the phone, at the forged L on the invoice, at the H in Leah. They were identical. "That's his handwriting," I whispered. The realization landed like a stone in my gut. "That's Graham's handwriting. He signed my name." Derek looked at the personal loan application on his desk, the one for $25,000. He slid it across to me. "Compare them," he said. I looked at the signature on the loan, Leah Kincaid, and then at the photo of the wedding invoice. Leah Kincaid, the same loops, the same sharp angles, the same hand, his hand. This whole time, I had been afraid of their judgment, afraid of their anger, afraid of being alone. I had been grieving a relationship I thought I'd lost, a family I thought I'd failed. I looked at the evidence piled on Derek's desk, the bank transfers, the maxed-out credit cards, the fraudulent loan, the forged invoice. I thought of Vivian's screaming voicemail. The fear didn't disappear. It was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was being eclipsed. It was being burned away by something hotter, something cleaner. Rage. I was not grieving. I was being robbed. I was not a failed fiancé. I was the victim of a long con, and the man I was supposed to marry was the ringleader. I carefully placed my phone back in my purse. I squared my shoulders and looked Derek Shaw right in the eye. "They are criminals," I said, my voice level, without a single tremor. "So let's treat them like it. What's step 2? I walked out of Derek Shaw's office with a folder labeled Evidence and a backbone made of ice. The rage carried me for 2 blocks, and then the adrenaline crashed, leaving me shaking so hard I had to sit on a concrete bench. The $58,000 in fraudulent debt felt like a physical weight, a concrete block tied to my name. My first call wasn't to a cop, it was to my therapist. Dr. Lila Mason's office was the complete opposite of Derek's. It was warm, filled with soft textures, green plants, and the faint scent of tea. She listened, her hands wrapped around a mug, as the entire story poured out of me. The audit, the $336,000, the secret credit cards, the forged loan, Vivian's voicemail. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes. She didn't tell me to breathe. She just nodded slowly, her expression serious. "Leah," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you have survived a profound psychological and financial violation. Your anger is not only justified, it is necessary. It is the part of you that knows you deserve better, but anger alone isn't a strategy." She picked up a pen and wrote a name and number on a thick cream-colored card. "You have an excellent financial auditor. Now you need a warrior. Her name is Renee Calder. She's the best financial abuse attorney in the state. She eats men like Graham for breakfast." Renee Calder's office was downtown, on the 42nd floor, in a building of smoked glass and steel. She was tall, impeccably dressed, and had a handshake that could crush stone. She'd already reviewed the initial file Derek had securely messengered over. "It's a masterpiece," she said, tapping the evidence folder. We were in a conference room with a view that spanned the entire city. It's rare to get a client who's this organized this fast. Graham and his family, they're sloppy, arrogant, they got greedy, and they assumed you were stupid. That's the opening we're going to drive a truck through." "Derek froze my credit," I said, my voice sounding more confident than I felt. "He said that stops the bleeding." "Freezing your credit is triage," Renee said, leaning forward. "I'm here to save the patient and make sure the attackers go to jail. We're going to pursue a twofold strategy. First, we launch a civil scorched earth campaign to recover every cent. Second, we assemble a criminal case so airtight that the Monroe County District Attorney will be fighting us for the right to prosecute." She held up a finger. "But to do that, Derek's audit isn't enough. We need more than bank statements. We need irrefutable technical proof. We need to place Graham's fingers on the keyboard." Thus began the real investigation. Renee immediately hired a digital forensics expert, a man who used to work for the FBI. His job was to trace the digital footprints. "I want the IP address for every single credit card application," Renee instructed him in a conference call. "I want the device ID, the metadata from the loan application PDF. I want to know if he applied for this $25,000 loan from his work computer, or better yet, from the new iPad you bought him for his birthday." While the expert went to work, Renee focused on the physical world. She filed a subpoena with the Homeowners Association for Graham's parents' condo. "We want all lobby and mailroom camera footage for the last 90 days. She explained to me. "We know from Derek's report that the fraudulent statements were mailed there. We are going to get video of Vivian or George Whitaker picking up envelopes from Capital One and Chase, addressed to you. That's mail fraud, a federal offense." Next, she moved on to the forgeries. "The loan and the wedding invoice are good, but they're new. Criminals have patterns. Has Graham ever signed your name to anything before? Anything at all?" I racked my brain. "No, never. Wait, years ago, when I was traveling for that big project in Asia, he had me sign a limited power of attorney, just so he could deposit a physical check for me and handle a car repair." Renee's eyes lit up. "Where is that document?" "It's in our home safe, or it was." "Get it," she said. That night, with Evan standing watch on the sidewalk, I used my old key to enter the apartment I had shared with Graham. It was empty, sterile. He'd already moved out. I went straight to the safe in the closet. The original limited POA was still there. But something else was with it. It was another document, dated just 9 months ago, a durable power of attorney. This one wasn't limited. It gave Graham sweeping, total control over my finances, my property, everything. My signature was at the bottom. It was another forgery, a better one this time, more practiced, but still, undeniably, his hand. I brought it to Renee's office the next morning. She stared at it for a full minute, her face unreadable. "This," she said, her voice cold with fury, "is the master key. This is how he thought he could get away with everything. He could drain your accounts, sign loans, and if you ever found out, He just claimed this document gave him the authority. She pointed to the notary stamp at the bottom. And look at this. The notary is a Patricia Blevins. Let me guess. Is that his mother's assistant? Her bridge partner? A quick search confirmed it. Patricia Blevins was the receptionist at his father's failing dental practice. She curbside signed this, Renee said with disgust. She notarized it without you being present, which is highly illegal. We're going to have her license, her job, and she'll be lucky to avoid jail time herself. She just became our star witness against him. Renee now had a stack of files 3 inches thick. She duplicated everything. One copy, she said, goes to the Illinois Department of Justice with a formal complaint against the notary. Another goes straight to the Economic Crimes Unit at the Monroe County DA's office. We are not just asking them to investigate, we are handing them a finished case. We'll also file a formal petition with the credit bureaus, backed by these reports, to have you officially recognized as a victim of identity theft. That $58,000 in debt? It will be legally discharged. It will vanish. Her next move was tactical. She contacted the bank that held the $20,000 deposit for the Grand Oak Room. Armed with the forged invoice and the loan application, she filed a fraud claim. We are requesting an immediate freeze on that deposit account, pending a criminal investigation into the fraudulent nature of the contract. Graham wouldn't be getting that deposit back. He wouldn't be marrying anyone else there, either. Finally, she brought my brother Evan into the office. He was nervous, but loyal. Renee was gentle but direct. Evan, Leah told me you were present on occasions when the Whitaker family pressured her for money. All the time, Evan said, clenching his fists. Especially his brother, Brian. He was always trying to get me to borrow Leah's card for him. Said she had plenty. Graham would just laugh and say, "One day it'll all be ours anyway." And Vivian, she once told Leah to her face that her money was family money now. I need you to write that down, Renee said. Exactly as you remember it. Dates, times, locations. Be precise. Evan spent 2 hours writing. When he was done, he signed a formal affidavit in front of a notary. A real one. This time, his testimony painted a clear picture. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a conscious, long-term conspiracy. With all the pieces in place, Renee sat me down. It's time, she said. We are going to invite them to a meeting. One time, here, in this office, Graham, his parents, and their lawyer, if they're smart enough to have one. She slid a single-page document across the table. It was a script, a set of talking points. You will not speak to them before this meeting. You will not answer their calls, their texts, or their emails. You will forward everything to me. When they arrive, I will do the talking. You will sit, and you will listen. We will not be negotiating. She tapped the file. We will be presenting them with 2 options. Option 1, they sign a full confession, liquidate whatever assets they have left, and agree to a repayment plan for the full $336,000, plus all your legal fees. In return, we consider asking the DA to pursue a non-custodial sentence. And option 2? I asked. Renee's smile was chilling. Option 2. I hand-deliver this entire investigation to the DA, the DOJ, and the IRS, and we let a grand jury decide how many years they spend in prison. The old framework, where you were the supplicant, is over. The new framework begins the second they walk through that door, and in this framework, we do not bargain. The invitation to Renee's office was sent via a registered courier, a single, formal letter addressed to Graham, George, and Vivian Whitaker, inviting them to a meeting to discuss financial discrepancies. It gave them a date, November 10th, 5 days. The silence lasted for exactly 24 hours. Then, the gaslighting began. It was not a slow burn, it was an explosion. My phone, which had been blissfully quiet, lit up with a call from the front desk of my new apartment building. I had moved into a secure high-rise, one where my name was not on the public directory, one that required a key fob just to operate the elevator. Ms. Kincaid? The concierge said, his voice professionally neutral. There is a Mr. Graham Whitaker here to see you. He says you are expecting him. My blood turned to ice. I am absolutely not, I said, my voice sharp and clear. Please tell him to leave. I have, ma'am, the concierge replied, a hint of stress in his voice. He is rather insistent. He says he knows you are up here and that he has a right to see you. He mentioned he has relationships with the building management. The sheer, unmitigated audacity. He was trying to bluff his way past security, implying he was too important, too connected for rules, the same arrogance that made him think he could steal my name. He is not to come up under any circumstances, I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. He is not my fiancé. He is a person with whom I am in a legal dispute. If he refuses to leave, please call the police. Understood, Ms. Kincaid. I hung up and walked to my floor-to-ceiling window, which overlooked the street 20 floors below. I could not see the entrance directly, but I did not need to. I pulled up the building's resident security app on my phone, which allowed me to view the live camera feed from the lobby. There he was, Graham. He looked terrible. His suit, usually immaculate, was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He was leaning aggressively on the marble concierge desk, jabbing his finger at the poor man. He looked entitled and absolutely furious. As I watched, the head of building security, a large man I had nodded to that morning, came out from a back office. He spoke to Graham firmly, then placed a hand on his shoulder. Graham's face contorted. He was clearly not used to being told no by people he considered beneath him. He ripped his shoulder away, said something that looked like a curse, then spun around and stormed out the automatic glass doors, disappearing onto the sidewalk. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with rage. He had come here. He had tried to force his way in. I immediately saved the clip from the app, which was automatically time-stamped. I emailed it to Renee with the subject line, Evidence Harassment 11:06. Her reply came back in less than 60 seconds. Keep doing exactly that. He is emotional, which means he is stupid. He is reacting, not thinking. Let him dig his own grave. The failed ambush at my apartment opened the floodgates. The Whitakers clearly interpreted the legal letter not as a warning, but as an act of war, and they reacted true to form, by trying to bully, cajole, and guilt me into submission. My phone buzzed. A text from Vivian. The tone was no longer the shrill anger from her voicemail. This was the manipulative, saccharine pleading I knew even better. Leah, darling, this has gone on long enough. Graham is a wreck. He loves you so much. He just made some mistakes. We all make mistakes. Sweetheart, please, call me. Let's fix this. This is your family. You can't just throw away family. I looked at the message, feeling the old familiar twist of guilt in my stomach. The urge to fix it, to be the reasonable one, was a reflex, conditioned by years of abuse. I took a breath and typed out the reply Renee and I had scripted for this very moment. It was cold. It was impersonal. It was perfect. All future communication regarding this matter must be directed to my legal counsel. Renee Calder. Her contact information is in the letter you received. I sent it. I then created an auto-reply filter on my phone. Any message from Vivian's number, George's number, or Graham's number would now receive that exact same message, instantly. I would not even see their texts come in. They were routed to a folder I had labeled Blockade. It took Vivian exactly 2 minutes to realize what I had done. She tried texting again, a string of question marks. The auto-reply hit her again. She tried calling. It went straight to my new voicemail, where my own voice stated, You have reached Leah Kincaid. All legal and financial inquiries must be directed to Renee Calder. Then, the pack deployed. They had coordinated their attack. My phone lit up again. Brielle, Graham's sister. Leah, what are you doing? Mother is beside herself. She thinks you're going to sue us. She's having palpitations. You know her heart condition. Are you trying to kill her? After everything she has done for you, welcoming you into her home? I cannot believe you would be this cruel. Graham is heartbroken. You are tearing this family apart. Ah, yes. The heart condition, the mythical all-purpose ailment Vivian trotted out whenever she was crossed, denied something, or asked to pay her own dinner bill. It was as predictable as the sunrise. For years, I had catered to it. "Oh, Vivian, please sit down." "No, of course, Vivian, I will handle it." "Do not stress, Vivian, we will pay for it." I looked at Brielle's text. I saw the calculated leverage, the emotional blackmail. Plain as day. "You are tearing this family apart." No, the family was rotten from the inside out. I was just the one holding the flashlight. I did not reply. I simply added Brielle's number to the block list. Her messages could join her mother's in the void. Next came Colton Fairchild, Brielle's puffed-up husband. His text was different. It was not emotional. It was a poorly veiled threat, an attempt at intimidation from a man who believed his last name was a weapon. "Leah, I do not know what kind of game you think you're playing, but I advise you to stop. The Whitakers are good people. My family has done business in this city for a long time. You do not want to get a reputation for being vindictive. The Fairchilds will remember this. Think about your future." I stared at the words. The Fairchilds will remember this. It was the classic, cowardly language of the privileged bully. He was not saying what he would do. He was just implying that his name, his family, had the power to hurt me in ways I could not see, to poison wells I had not even dug yet. I screenshotted the text and sent it to Renee. Her reply was a delighted phone call. She was not using her speakerphone. This call was for me. "Oh, this is gold," she laughed, and it was a genuinely happy, sharp sound. Vague, non-specific threats from a third party? This is litigation gold. He thinks he is being intimidating. What he is actually doing is establishing a pattern of coercive behavior on behalf of the primary defendants. He has just roped himself right into the conspiracy. Thank you, Colton. She paused, and her voice grew serious. Okay, they are panicked. They are trying to hit you from every angle. Guilt, fear, intimidation. It means our strategy is working. They are terrified of what is in that file. Hold the line. Leah, do not talk to them. I will not, I said. Good, because I have more news. She sounded energized, like a hunter who has spotted her prey. 2 things. First, Derek Shaw just confirmed the Grand Oak Room has officially frozen the $20,000 deposit. The bank has flagged the account for fraud. Just as we requested. Graham cannot get that money back. It is in limbo, pending our civil suit. A small, sharp thrill went through me. $20,000, a concrete victory, my money, my name, now locked away from him. Second, Renee continued, I just got off the phone with an assistant district attorney in the Economic Crimes Unit. He received our file. And? I held my breath, my knuckles white on the phone. He is, and I quote, especially interested. They get fraud cases all the time. Leah, forged checks, stolen cards, but he said the forged durable power of attorney, combined with the compromised notary, takes this to a whole new level of criminal intent. That is not a panicked kid stealing a credit card. That is a planned, deliberate, high-level attempt to seize your entire financial identity. The DA's office does not like that. They are officially opening an investigation. They will be in touch. When I hung up, the room was silent. Officially opening an investigation. The words echoed. This was real. This was not a family squabble I could be shamed out of. The city's own prosecutors were looking at the file, at the forgeries, at the proof. My phone buzzed one last time. This time, it was not a Whitaker, it was Evan. My thumb hovered over the message. I was so afraid he, too, would tell me I was going too far, that I should just let it go for the sake of peace. I opened it. The text was short. Hey, I'm guessing all hell is breaking loose over there. Just wanted to say, you are doing the right thing. Do not let them make you doubt it. What they did was wrong. Period. I am on your side, the side of the truth. I had not realized I was crying until a tear hit my phone screen. It was not the gut-wrenching grief of a few weeks ago. It was relief. It was the profound, grounding comfort of not being alone. I had one person from that old life who saw the truth, who was not blinded by loyalty or greed. It was enough. That night, the frantic texts and calls from the Whitakers finally stopped. The auto-replies had done their job. The blockade was holding. For the first time in what felt like a decade, the constant, anxious buzz in my head went quiet. The fog of their expectations, their demands, their constant, low-level criticism, it was gone. I had been living in a state of high alert, a fog of anxiety. For so long I had forgotten what stillness felt like. I had spent my entire relationship with Graham trying to prove I was worthy, trying to be good enough, successful enough, accommodating enough, quiet enough. I had contorted myself into knots to earn their love, a love that was never real. It was just a cover for their limitless, gaping need. I walked to my desk, the one that looked out over the glittering, indifferent city lights. I took out a single piece of thick, simple, cream-colored stationery, the kind I loved but rarely used. I picked up a heavy, black ink pen. I did not need to write a long, cathartic letter. I did not need to list their sins. The evidence file did that. I just needed one sentence to close this chapter, to define the terms of my new life. I wrote the words on the paper, my handwriting clear and strong. I am not the one who has to prove my worth. I looked at it. It was the truth. It was the simplest, most profound truth of my life. I put the pen down, I went to bed, and for the first time since I had met Graham Whitaker, I fell into a deep, dreamless, and profoundly peaceful sleep. The 4 days leading up to the November 10th meeting were a blur of cold, precise, and accelerating activity. The final pieces of the puzzle were not just falling into place, they were being hammered in, one by one. The first call was from the digital forensics expert. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "We have him," he said. "The IP address used to apply for the Chase Sapphire card and the American Express card is a residential connection registered to George Whitaker. He did not even bother to use a public network or a VPN. He did it from his own house." But there was more. The expert had correlated the timestamps of the applications with publicly available data. The Chase card application was completed at 8:30 p.m. on a Tuesday in March, he continued. According to television broadcast schedules, that time frame matches the second half of the Chicago Bulls game. The American Express application was submitted at 9:15 p.m. on a Sunday in May, during the season finale of a popular reality television show. I had to sit down. The sheer, casual arrogance of it was breathtaking. They were sitting on their sofa, committing multiple felonies, while watching television. Then Derek Shaw forwarded the itemized statements for those fraudulent cards. The $58,000 in debt was not for emergencies. It was not a family in crisis, borrowing to keep the lights on. It was a lifestyle subsidy. There were thousands of dollars in charges at high-end spa retreats for Vivian and Brielle. $4,000 in greens fees and cart rentals at an exclusive golf club for George and Graham. A single charge for over $7,000 at a luxury jeweler for a men's Tag Heuer watch, all charged in my name. They were not just stealing my money. They were liquidating my hard-earned future to fund a present they had not earned and could not afford. The true bombshell, however, came from Renee. Her team, having filed an expedited subpoena for Colton Fairchild's email records based on his threatening text message, had found the conspiracy in plain text. It was an email from Brielle to her husband, sent the day after I left Graham. "He is a complete wreck, I know," she had written. "But do not worry, darling. She will be back. She cannot handle the guilt. Just keep mother crying and mentioning her heart. She will pay for the wedding deposit and anything else just to make it stop. She always does." I read the email 3 times. Just keep mother crying. The feigned heart palpitations, the manufactured guilt, the constant wearying manipulation. It was all there, a documented, coordinated strategy. "This proves malice, intent, and conspiracy," Renee said, her voice like flint. "But it is not the worst thing we found." She slid a new set of documents across the conference table. They were from my grandmother's estate. While Derek was auditing your active accounts, I had a hunch, Renee said. I initiated a search for any trust vehicles or estate funds in your name. You had a trust fund. Leah, left to you by your maternal grandmother. It was valued at just over $100,000, designated for a future home purchase. Had? I repeated. My mouth was suddenly dry. It was emptied, in full, 18 months ago, Renee stated. I stared at her. $100,000. But how? That would require my signature. I never— No, Renee said, her voice turning to ice. It did not require your signature. It required the signature of your durable power of attorney. Graham used the forgery. The $25,000 loan was a test run. The credit cards were just pocket money. The durable POA was the master key to the vault, and he had used it to steal my inheritance. The money my grandmother, who had despised the Whitakers' gaudy desperation, had left specifically to protect me. The total amount stolen was no longer $336,000. We were now approaching $500,000. The next day, the final elements clicked into place. The notary, Patricia Blevins, had been brought in for questioning by an investigator from the Illinois Department of Justice, responding to Renee's formal complaint, faced with a felony charge, immediate revocation of her license, and potential prison time. She crumbled in less than 5 minutes. She admitted she had never seen me. She had curbside signed the durable power of attorney as a favor. She said Graham, a nice young man she had known for years, had caught her in the parking lot of her office. He claimed I was in a critical meeting and could not leave, and the document was urgent. She had notarized the instrument that gave him total control of my life on the hood of his car. Simultaneously, the formal handwriting analysis report came back. The forensic expert had compared the forged POA, the fraudulent $25,000 loan application, and the wedding invoice against Graham's signature on the old, legitimate, limited power of attorney from my Asia trip. The report was clinical and damning. A conclusive match, it read. 14 distinct characteristics of formation, including pen lift, baseline alignment, and initial stroke formation, are identical. The signatures are unequivocally the work of the same hand. Renee's office began to look like a war room. She took all of it: the IP address traces, the itemized spa receipts, Brielle's email, the emptied trust fund documents, the notary's signed confession, and the 14-point handwriting analysis, and compiled it into 3 identical binders. They were each 3 inches thick. The prosecution package, she called it. She placed 2 of them on her credenza. The third, which was hers, sat on the conference table. They are complete, but they are not yet filed. That is the leverage. That is what we will present tomorrow. She walked me through the script one final time. It was simple. I will present the findings, she said. I will not be interrupted. I will lay out the evidence for state and federal charges: wire fraud, mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy, and forgery. I will then present them with their 2 options. Option 1, full and immediate restitution of every dollar, including all legal and forensic fees, and they sign a binding, notarized confession of guilt. Option 2, I pick up this phone, I call the assistant district attorney, and I tell him the package is on its way. There was a knock on the conference room door. It was Evan. He looked tired but resolute. I heard the meeting is tomorrow, he said, looking straight at me. I nodded. I want to be there, he said. It was not a question. It was a statement. When they try to lie, when they try to gaslight you and say, this is all a misunderstanding, I want to be in the room. I want to be there as a witness to what they said, to who they really are. Renee studied him for a long moment and then nodded once. You can be present, but you will not speak unless I ask you to. I understand, he said. The morning of November 10th dawned cold and gray, a classic Chicago drizzle settling over the city, turning the streets to dark mirrors. I woke up before my alarm, but not from anxiety. I woke up from a place of profound stillness. I did not dress for battle. I did not put on a power suit or sharp heels. I wore a simple black sweater, gray trousers, and flat shoes. I wore no jewelry. My hands were empty. I was not there to fight them. I was not there to yell, or to cry, or to demand an explanation. I was there to watch them choose. Evan met me in the lobby of Renee's building, holding 2 cups of coffee. He did not say much, just squeezed my arm. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I am," I said, and I meant it. We rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor. The car was lined with polished steel, and in the reflection, I saw a woman I almost did not recognize. It was me, but the frantic energy was gone, the desperation to please, the fear of their disapproval, the anxious knot that had lived in my stomach for 5 years. It had all been scoured away. My face was calm. My eyes were clear. My hands, resting by my sides, were not trembling. We stepped out into the quiet reception area. Renee's assistant met us. "They are here," she said quietly. "All 3 of them, and their lawyer. They are in conference room A." Renee was standing at the door, waiting for us. She held the 3-inch thick binder in her hand. She looked at me, giving me one last chance to back out. I just nodded once. She pushed the heavy glass door open, and we walked inside. The conference room was cold. The air conditioning was set low, and the gray, drizzling rain outside the 42nd floor window seemed to suck all the warmth from the glass. It was 9:58 in the morning. We were seated on one side of the massive, polished mahogany table. I sat in the middle, my back straight, my hands resting in my lap. To my right was Renee Calder, her face a mask of neutral professionalism. To my left was my brother, Evan, his expression firm and watchful. Flanking us were Derek Shaw, the financial auditor, and the quiet, unassuming man who was the digital forensics expert. In front of Renee, arranged in a perfect, intimidating line, were 5 binders. 3 were the 3-inch thick prosecution packages, bound in stark white. The other 2 were thinner, one red, one blue, containing executive summaries. They were precisely aligned with the edge of the table. The room smelled of expensive carpet, faint coffee, and the sharp, clean scent of laser-printed paper. At exactly 10 o'clock, the heavy glass door swung open. Graham entered first. He was wearing his best blue suit, the one he called his deal closer. He had the look of a man walking into a negotiation he already believed he had won, a confident, slightly annoyed smirk on his face. Behind him was Vivian, her expression a thundercloud of indignation. She was already glaring at me, as if preparing to teach me a lesson. Last came George, Graham's father, looking gray and harried, followed by a man I did not recognize, a short, flustered-looking lawyer clutching a thin leather briefcase. They stopped when they saw our side of the table. Graham's smirk faltered. He had been expecting just me, maybe one lawyer. He had not been expecting a panel. He had not been expecting an audience. "Leah, what in the hell is this?" Graham began, his voice attempting to bluster. "Please take your seats, Mr. Whitaker," Renee said, her voice cutting through his. It was not a request. "My name is Renee Calder. I am Ms. Kincaid's counsel. With me are Mr. Derek Shaw, a forensic accountant, and a digital forensics specialist, and you know Mr. Kincaid." Their lawyer, a man named Harris, hurried his clients into the chairs opposite us. He looked at the row of binders, then at Renee, and his face was already pale. "My clients are here in good faith to discuss a domestic dispute," Harris began, shuffling papers. Renee held up a hand, and he stopped mid-sentence. "Let me be perfectly clear, counselor," Renee said, her voice chillingly pleasant. "This is not a negotiation. We are not here to discuss a domestic dispute. I have invited you here today as a professional courtesy before we file a completed criminal investigation with the Monroe County District Attorney and the United States Attorney's Office. This meeting is to inform your clients of the 2, and only 2, options available to them as of this morning." Vivian made a sound like a scoff. Graham just stared. Their lawyer looked like he was going to be sick. Renee opened the red binder. Let us begin. Shaw, if you would. Derek Shaw leaned forward. He did not look at the Whitakers. He addressed their lawyer. Over the last 5 years, he began, his voice a dry monotone, a total of $336,000 was systematically transferred from Ms. Kincaid's joint and personal accounts. These funds were moved, via over 100 separate transactions, into a series of shell accounts and holding companies registered to Whitaker Holdings, G. Whitaker, and V. Whitaker. He pushed a summary page across the table. Here is the full accounting of every dollar. Harris, the lawyer, stared at the list of dates and amounts. That's preposterous, Vivian snapped. That was family money. Investments Graham was managing for all of us. Then you will have no trouble explaining these, Renee said, pushing the blue binder forward. My other colleague. The forensics expert spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, almost academic. We have traced the applications for 3 fraudulent credit cards and 1 personal loan taken out in Ms. Kincaid's name, for a total of $58,000. The IP address for the Capital One and Chase Sapphire applications is a residential connection registered to Mr. and Mrs. George Whitaker. The applications were submitted, respectively, during a televised Chicago Bulls game and the season finale of a reality program. Graham's face went white. The expert continued. Furthermore, the paper statements for these cards, as well as for the $25,000 personal loan, were mailed directly to your residence in Edgewood. We have subpoenaed and received security footage of Mrs. Whitaker and Mr. George Whitaker collecting mail addressed to Leah Kincaid from your lobby's mailroom. Renee let that sink in. The only sound was the faint tick of the large wall clock and the sound of the rain against the glass. And now, Renee said, we come to the how. She placed her hand on one of the thick white binders. Your clients, Mr. Harris, believed they were clever. They forged a durable power of attorney, giving Mr. Graham Whitaker total control over Ms. Kincaid's finances, including her inheritance. That is a lie, Graham exploded, surging to his feet. She signed that. I was with her. She signed it. Then you will be fascinated by this, Renee said, unflinching. She slid a document across the table. This is the signed, notarized confession of the notary public, Patricia Blevins, she admits, in detail, to notarizing the document for Mr. Whitaker in a parking lot, without Ms. Kincaid being present. She is cooperating fully with the Department of Justice in exchange for leniency. Graham stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing. He looked like he had been punched. Renee slid a second report across, and this is the 14-point forensic handwriting analysis. It compares Mr. Whitaker's known signature against the forged POA, the fraudulent loan application, and a forged $20,000 wedding venue contract. The expert concludes, and I quote, "The signatures are unequivocally the work of the same hand, your client's hand." This is insane, Graham whispered, sinking back into his chair. Leah, this is a family matter. We can fix this. This is just a misunderstanding. Renee's patience snapped. Her voice dropped, and the temperature in the room dropped with it. Mr. Whitaker, she said, leaning forward, conspiracy to commit wire fraud is not a family matter. Mail fraud is not a misunderstanding. Aggravated identity theft, which carries a 2-year mandatory minimum prison sentence, is not something we fix. These are state and federal felonies. The law does not have an exemption for family members. She stood up and walked to the head of the table. Which brings us to your 2 options. They are not negotiable, and you have until noon tomorrow to decide. She held up one finger. Option A. I pick up my phone. I call the DA's office, and I inform them that these binders are being messengered over. They will proceed with a grand jury indictment. Given the evidence, the confession, the handwriting analysis, the IP traces, and the emails from your sister, Ms. Fairchild, outlining the conspiracy. Vivian gasped at that. You will all, most likely, be convicted. You will lose everything, and Mr. Whitaker will go to prison, as may you, Mrs. Whitaker, for your part in the mail fraud." She held up a second finger. "Option B. You sign a full, binding confession, admitting to all counts. You agree to the immediate court-ordered sale of your home in Edgewood and any other assets to begin repayment of the $484,000 you have stolen. That includes the principal, plus my client's legal and forensic fees. That money will be paid into an escrow account. You will sign a permanent, no contact, no disparagement order. In return, and only upon successful completion of these terms, we will inform the district attorney that Ms. Kincaid has been made financially whole and wishes to decline to press charges, though we cannot, of course, stop their own investigation." Vivian finally broke. It was the mention of the house she was so proud of. "Our home?" she shrieked, her face crumbling. "You cannot take our home. George, do something. Leah!" She turned to me, her face wet with tears. "Leah, how could you do this to us, to your family? After everything we have given you, we loved you." The old guilt pricked at me, the conditioned reflex to soothe her, but before I could even flinch, Renee spoke. "Your love is not a legal defense, Mrs. Whitaker," she said, her voice devoid of sympathy, "and your tears are not admissible. This email, however, is—" She lifted a page from the binder. "From your daughter, Brielle, to her husband. Just keep mother crying and mentioning her heart. She will pay. She always does. It appears this performance has lost its intended effect." Vivian's sobs choked off as if she had been strangled. She stared at Renee, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. Their lawyer, Harris, was pale, his hands visibly shaking as he whispered furiously to Graham, who was just staring at the polished table, his reflection staring back. "They're lying," Graham muttered, looking at me, his eyes desperate. "Leah, they're lying. Evan, you know us. Tell her this is crazy." Evan, who had been silent, leaned forward. He did not look at Graham. He looked at me. "Renee," he said, and his voice was clear and steady in the silent room. "May I?" Renee nodded. "Graham," Evan said, "I was there, in your kitchen, when your brother Brian asked me to go get Leah's credit card so he could borrow it for a new stereo, and I was there when you laughed and told him, 'Don't worry, it's all family money now.' Anyway, and I was there at your birthday dinner when Vivian told Leah, to her face, that her job was just fun money for the family to use. I said it was wrong then, and I'm saying it now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft." The final word hung in the air. Theft. No one spoke. Graham's lawyer had his head in his hands, rubbing his temples. Vivian was rigid, her face white. George looked like he had aged 10 years. Graham just stared at his hands. Renee returned to her seat. "The choice is yours," she said quietly. "Option A or Option B. You have 26 hours. The room was utterly silent. There was no sound but the faint, relentless tick, tick, tick of the wall clock, each second stretching the tension, each sound like a drop of water on stone. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of printed ink on the reports that lay on the table between us. The ink was dry. The trap was set. All that was left was for them to choose. The silence in the room stretched, taut and thin, vibrating at a frequency just below hearing. It was broken only by the clock on the wall, its polished second hand sweeping with a quiet, relentless click. Each sound landed like a hammer blow. Graham's lawyer, Harris, was whispering furiously, his words a frantic, sibilant hiss. But Graham was not listening. He was gray, his eyes locked on the forensic handwriting analysis, the loops and swirls of his own hand, his own forgeries, staring back at him. Vivian was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling in sharp, shallow bursts, her face mottled with a rage that had nowhere to go. Graham finally stirred. He looked past his lawyer, past his mother, and his eyes found mine. His expression was not remorseful, It was not apologetic. It was baffled. The look of a man who cannot understand how a tool he has used his whole life has suddenly turned in his hand. He pulled out his phone. "I am calling Colton Fairchild," he announced, his voice hoarse, an attempt at his old, bluffing authority. "His family's lawyers will sort this out. They will eat you alive. Renee, this is slander. This is extortion." Renee smiled. It was a thin, cold, dangerous smile. "Please, do, put him on speakerphone." Graham's thumb, visibly shaking, jabbed at the screen. The call rang once, twice. "Graham?" Colton's voice filled the room. It was not the booming, confident baritone I remembered. It was clipped, wary, and cold. "Colton, thank God," Graham said, a pathetic rush of false bravado returning. "Listen, this woman, this lawyer, she's trying to extort us. She has a pile of forged documents. I need your family's legal team. I need—" "No," Colton said. The word was flat, final. What do you mean, no?" Graham stammered, his face slackening. "I mean no, Graham," Colton said, his voice sharp with annoyance. "I received a courtesy call this morning from a Ms. Calder's office, informing me that my own text message to Ms. Kincaid is being held as Exhibit C in a potential conspiracy filing. My lawyers have advised me to have absolutely no further contact with you or your family. We are not involved. Do not call this number again." The line clicked dead. The silence that rushed in was heavier, more profound. Graham stared at his phone. The last, desperate lifeline he thought he had, the power of the Fairchild name, had just severed itself, terrified of being pulled down with him. Vivian, seeing her son's final defense crumble, turned her rage. She was not enraged at Graham for his crimes, but at her daughter for her failed strategy. "She promised!" Vivian shrieked, her voice cracking. She was pointing, but not at me, not at Renee. She was pointing at an empty space, at her absent daughter. "Brielle promised me. She said you would pay. She said you always pay." "Are you referring to this Mrs. Whitaker?" Renee asked, her voice dangerously calm. She slid a single sheet of paper from the white binder. It was an email, printed in full, vibrant color. The text from Brielle to Colton. Renee had highlighted a specific line. She read it aloud, her voice clear and precise, cutting through the room. "Just keep Mother crying and mentioning her heart. She will pay for the wedding deposit and anything else just to make it stop. She always does." Vivian looked at the printed email, her own daughter's words betraying the cynical, hollow mechanics of their family's manipulation. She had been exposed, not just as a thief, but as a co-conspirator in a cheap, emotional racket. She had no defense. Graham tried one last, pathetic bluff. He looked at the summary of the stolen trust fund, the $100,000 from my grandmother. "That's not right," he said, desperately trying to regain his financial manager persona. "That trust, it was not just for Leah. It was an ancestral fund, for the family, for both of us. After the wedding, Leah knew that. It was for us." I almost laughed. It was such a bald-faced, arrogant, and clumsy lie. Derek Shaw, who had been silent, spoke for the second time. He did not raise his voice. He simply slid another document across the table. It was the original trust charter, bearing my grandmother's signature. "Page 4, Section 3, Subsection A, Mr. Whitaker," Derek said, his voice a dry monotone. "The trust is designated for the sole and exclusive benefit of the beneficiary, Leah Kincaid. It specifies, and I quote, 'to be protected from any and all marital claims.' Your name appears nowhere in the document." The walls were closing in. There were no more lies to tell, no more angles to play. And so Vivian, left with no moves on the chessboard, did the only thing she knew how to do. She reverted to the nuclear option. I can't," she gasped, her hand flying dramatically to her chest. "My heart. I cannot breathe. I think Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she began to slump sideways in her chair, a low theatrical moan escaping her lips. George, her husband, dutifully jumped up. "Vivian! Oh God! Someone help! Her heart!" This was the moment that had always worked, the moment where I was supposed to panic, to apologize, to back down, to say stop. I looked at her. The woman who had terrorized me for 5 years with this very performance, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, just a cold, bottomless pity. Renee Calder did not move. She did not flinch. She did not even look surprised. She calmly picked up her desk phone and pressed a single button. "Helen, could you send them in, please?" she said, her voice as pleasant as if ordering coffee. Before George could even straighten his wife's chair, the conference room door opened, and 2 uniformed, professional EMTs walked in, carrying a full kit. They looked calm, efficient, and profoundly bored. "We received a call about a potential cardiac event at this location," the first EMT said, walking directly toward Vivian. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I am going to take your blood pressure." Vivian's eyes snapped open. She stared at the EMT, who was already wrapping a blood pressure cuff around her arm. Her face, which had been pale and slack with feigned unconsciousness, flushed a deep, furious crimson. The attack was over. Get your hands off me!" she sputtered, pushing his arm away with surprising strength. "I am fine. It was just a momentary spell. I am perfectly fine." "Understood, ma'am," the EMT said, not batting an eye. He was clearly familiar with this kind of drama. "We will be right outside in the hall if you change your mind." They packed their kit and walked out, closing the door quietly behind them. Renee had anticipated the heart condition. She had staged paramedics in her building's lobby. The ultimate performance had met the ultimate preparation, and the performance had folded in less than 10 seconds. The play was over. Graham watched the entire exchange. He watched his mother's ultimate weapon be neutralized without a single word from me. He looked at the binders. He looked at his lawyer, Harris, who was now just staring at the table, his head in his hands, having given up. Graham understood. He was a financial advisor. His entire career depended on being licensed, on being bonded, on being trusted with other people's money. If he fought this, if he went to trial, even if by some impossible miracle he avoided prison, the criminal indictment alone would mean he would be permanently barred from the industry. He would be financially and professionally ruined, forever. Option A was not just prison, it was total, complete annihilation. I saw this realization settle on him. His arrogance finally cracked, revealing the terrified, weak, and pathetic man underneath. I slowly, deliberately, placed my right hand on the top of the nearest white binder, the one with the label, "Submit to DA," facing him. I did not tap it. I did not push it. I just rested my hand there, a quiet, final reminder of my choice. Vivian, realizing her feint had failed, turned to the only person in the room who had shown her any kindness in the past. She looked at my brother, her eyes brimming with real tears this time, tears of fear and humiliation. "Evan," she whispered, her voice genuinely broken. "Please, you are a good boy. You know us. You know this is not who we are. Do not let her do this. It is a mistake. Tell her to stop." Evan looked at this woman, who had mocked his sister for years, who had tried to turn him into an accomplice, and who was now begging him to save her. He slowly shook his head. "I cannot. Vivian," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I choose the truth, and this," he tapped the binders with one finger, "is the truth." "Okay," Graham whispered. The word was a puff of air. He was broken. "Okay, just the house. We will sell the house, but the trust fund. Leah, please, let me keep a small part. For my trouble. For managing it all those years." It was the last reflexive twitch of the parasite. Renee did not even grace him with a response. She simply took a red pen and circled a line on the restitution agreement in front of him. The line read, "Repayment of 100% of all funds, plus interest and all legal fees." "My face," Vivian murmured, staring at nothing. "My friends, everyone will know. Brielle, Colton, the club. We will be disgraced. We will be ruined." "That," Renee said, "is where you are incorrect. Option B has one, and only one, advantage for you." She flipped to the last page of the agreement and pointed to a clause. "A non-disclosure and non-disparagement clause. It binds all parties. If, and only if, you comply fully, sign the confession, and repay every cent. Ms. Kincaid agrees not to speak of this matter publicly. You avoid a criminal conviction, and you avoid public disgrace. Option A, a public trial, does not offer that." It was the final, brilliant move. She was offering them the one thing they still had left to lose, their reputation. She was offering them a chance to buy their own silence. They stalled. They looked at each other. They looked at their lawyer, who just shrugged, defeated. "Every day you delay," Renee said softly, "interest and penalties accrue, the price goes up, and the district attorney's office gets more impatient." She took a heavy, expensive-looking fountain pen from her jacket and placed it precisely in the center of the table, on top of the signature page, between Graham and his father. "Option A or option B. It is time to choose." The silence returned, but this time it was different. It was not the silence of a stalemate. It was the heavy, thick silence of defeat. The clock ticked. The pen lay on the dark wood, gleaming under the recessed lights. The tension in the room was so thick it was hard to breathe, like a guitar string tightened to its absolute limit, humming with a note of inevitable, pending release. Graham looked at me. His eyes were, for the first time, pleading. He was searching for the old Leah, the one who would fold, the one who would cry, the one who would say, "Oh, Graham, of course, let's just stop." I met his gaze. I felt nothing but the cold, clear relief of the truth. I had one thing left to say. I had prepared it. I had been waiting for this moment. I leaned forward, just slightly. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the polished mahogany. The air in the room was so heavy, so compressed. It felt like we were at the bottom of the ocean. Graham's eyes were locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw no arrogance, no charm, no manipulation. I saw only a desperate, hollowed-out panic. He was searching for the woman he had known, the woman who would absorb this, who would manage his emotions, who would make the conflict go away. He was looking for the Leah who would, in the end, pay. I looked at him, and I looked at his mother, a woman shrunken by the sudden, cold impact of reality. I looked at the binders of evidence, the years of my life they had consumed and liquidated. I raised my head. My voice, when it came out, was not loud. It was not angry. It was not shaking. It was as calm and as clear as the glass window beside me. It was the sound of a simple, unchangeable fact. "From now on," I said, my words dropping into the thick silence, "no one gets to use my name to live their life for them." It was not an accusation. It was a verdict. It was the closing of a door and the turning of a lock. Renee's laptop was on the table in front of me, open. Her email program queued to a new message. The recipients were the assistant district attorney and the head of the economic crimes unit. The subject line read, "Submission of evidence, Whitaker case, attached," I knew, was the digital, scanned, and finalized version of the 3-inch binder that sat beside my hand. All it needed was a command. I let my right hand move from the table. I deliberately slid the physical white binder, the one labeled "Submit to DA," a few inches toward the center of the table, a physical reminder of its weight. Then, I moved my hand to the laptop. I rested a single index finger on the trackpad, right over the send button. I did not press. I just rested it there. The potential energy was overwhelming. The entire room seemed to zero in on that one point of contact, my finger, and the digital abyss that lay just beneath it. I looked directly into Graham's eyes. "Sign the restitution," I said, my voice just as quiet, just as even. "Or I press." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. The only sound in the entire, vast 42nd floor office was the tick, tick, tick of the wall clock. Each click of the second hand was not a sound. It was a percussion, a small, sharp hammer blow against the tension, marking the seconds of their old life evaporating. There was no more bluster. There was no more arrogance. There were no more sarcastic remarks, no more gaslighting, no more, "It's just family." There was only the choice. Vivian's face, which had been a mask of performative tears and then crimson rage, had collapsed. She turned, her eyes wide and desperate, to the one person in the room who was not an enemy. She looked at my brother. "Evan," she whispered. It was a pathetic, gurgling sound. "Evan, please, you are a good man. You know us. Don't let this happen." It was her last, desperate appeal to the old rules. The rules where family, no matter how toxic, was expected to close ranks, to hide the secrets, to choose blood over truth. Evan did not move. He did not leave his seat. He did not offer a hand. He did not even turn his head fully. He simply looked at her, his expression one of profound, weary finality, and he said nothing. He just held her gaze, and in his silence, he gave her the loudest, most definitive answer of his life. His immobility was his choice. He had already chosen the truth. Vivian's face crumpled. That was the last, true break. She knew. They had lost. Graham's lawyer, Harris, let out a long, slow breath. He was beaten. He looked at Renee. Just read the terms," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Just read them, so we know." Renee, who had been watching, a neutral, observant predator, nodded once. She picked up a single-page document. This was not a negotiation. This was a sentencing. "As you wish," she said. Her voice was clinical. "You, Graham Whitaker, Vivian Whitaker, and George Whitaker will sign a legally binding confession, admitting to the fraudulent application of credit in Ms. Kincaid's name, totaling $58,000. You will also acknowledge the misappropriation, classified as a debt, of $336,000 from Ms. Kincaid's personal and trust accounts." She paused, letting the numbers land. "You will agree to the immediate listing and sale of your home at 422 Edgewood Drive. 100% of the proceeds will be placed into an escrow account, managed by my office, from which Ms. Kincaid will be made whole for the full amount of $484,000, plus all documented legal, forensic, and administrative fees. Any remaining funds, if any, will be returned to you. You will, this day, sign a revocation of all known and unknown powers of attorney, real or forged. You will sign a permanent, 500-yard, no-contact order, covering Ms. Kincaid and Mr. Evan Kincaid, and you will agree to the non-disclosure clause, which is your only protection from public ruin. Do you understand these terms?" Graham's head was bowed. He nodded. A single, jerky, broken movement. "Good," Renee said. She pressed the intercom on her desk. "Helen, would you please send in Ms. Rodriguez?" A moment later, the heavy glass door opened again. A sharp, professional woman in a dark suit walked in, carrying a large, leather-bound notary journal and a case. She did not look at the Whitakers. She walked to the end of the table, opened her book, uncapped her pen, and laid out her embosser stamp. She was ready, the final, living, breathing piece of Renee's meticulous trap. Renee printed 2 copies of the final, 30-page settlement agreement and confession from the silent laser printer in the corner. She slid 1 copy across the table to Harris and his clients. She placed the other in front of her. She uncapped her own pen and slid it across the table. It rolled, just slightly, and came to a stop in front of Graham. He stared at it. He stared at the last page. His hand, which I had once held, which I had once believed was strong and protective, was shaking. It was visibly, uncontrollably trembling. He reached for the pen, his fingers fumbling. As he signed his name, his real name, on a real document, this time, the entire facade of the man I had known disintegrated. The confidence, the charm, the effortless superiority. It all just fell away. It was a mask, and it had been ripped off, leaving only the small, terrified, and profoundly weak man beneath. He was nothing. He was just a thief. He pushed the document, with a ragged sigh, toward his mother. Vivian Whitaker looked at the signature line. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a black, acidic hatred that was more honest than any love she had ever feigned. She knew I had not just beaten her, I had exposed her. She would have to sell her house. She would lose her standing at the club. She would lose the respect she had demanded, but had never earned. She was, in the eyes of the world she valued, ruined. Her hand did not shake. It was rigid with fury. She snatched the pen, and her signature was a violent, angry slash of ink across the page. George Whitaker signed last, his face gray and empty. The notary, Ms. Rodriguez, was all business. She methodically checked their driver's licenses, asked them to swear to their signatures, and then, with a heavy, final thunk, she embossed the document. Thunk. It was the sound of a closing gate. She signed her own name, logged it in her journal, packed her tools, and left, as efficiently as she had arrived. Renee collected both signed originals. She placed one in a new, clean folder, the other, she left on the table. She then stood, walked to her credenza, and picked up the white 3-inch Submit to DA binder. She did not put it in a drawer. She placed it on a high, visible shelf behind her desk, the spine facing out, a permanent, visible, and constant warning. As per our agreement, Renee said, her voice now back to a neutral, businesslike tone, my office will hold this criminal filing in suspension, pending your full and immediate compliance with the restitution schedule. If you miss a single payment, if you default, or if you violate the no-contact order in any way, that binder will be at the district attorney's office within the hour. Do you understand?
Yes, Graham whispered, not looking up.
You may go, Renee said. They stood, Graham, George, and Vivian. They looked like survivors of a wreck, dazed, hollowed, and old. Their lawyer, Harris, just shoved his papers into his briefcase, his face grim, avoiding eye contact. Without a word, they turned and walked toward the door. They did not look at me. They did not look at Evan. They just left. The door opened. The oppressive, toxic weight that had filled the room, that had filled my life for 5 years, was suddenly gone. It did not bleed out. It was sucked out, into a vacuum. As they walked out, a clean, quiet, and profoundly empty space filled the room. It was the quiet of a fever having finally broken. I let my finger lift from the send button. I looked at Evan, and he looked at me. For the first time in a decade, I saw my brother, and he saw me. He reached across the table and, for the first time, I think, in our adult lives, he took my hand. It was solid. It was real. I had said one sentence, and it had been enough. I had taken my name back. Thank you for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from. So please share your thoughts and where you are in the comments below to connect with us. Be sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.